I received a call on my smartphone saying that my daughter had collapsed. I hurriedly caught a taxi and headed to the hospital, but my daughter had already passed away. Why? Tears overflowed, and a deeper sense of regret than sadness welled up.
The doctor said it was a heart attack.
My son-in-law Colton said in a calm tone. The 3 granddaughters who had come with him were crying loudly. It was no wonder they were crying and grieving over the sudden event. They were still in their sensitive teenage years. I couldn't help but hold the 3 of them tightly. Then, my daughter's funeral was held. Her boss and colleagues from work came to mourn her untimely death. However, that night, Colton said something shocking.
I'm going to remarry the president's daughter. The kids are a nuisance. You take care of them, old woman.
Unbelievably, he boldly declared that he was abandoning his family. And true to his word, he disappeared after the funeral. When I tried to contact him, the phone wouldn't connect. What was he planning to do with the grandchildren left behind? I decided to stay at my grandchildren's house to take care of them. One day, when I returned from shopping, I heard cheers coming from the living room. The grandchildren were laughing at something. Then, they quickly took a piece of paper that had just come out of the printer and handed it to me.
With this, Dad is going to hell,
said Lydia, the youngest daughter, with a smile as I approached. I am Ariana. Having finished raising my children as a single mother, I am now living alone. When I was still young, in my 30s, I lost my husband and lived with my daughter Natalie. Her rebellious phases during middle and high school are now nostalgic memories. I know I caused Natalie a lot of trouble by being a single parent, but I also tried to give her as much love as I could. As soon as she entered university, she confessed something to me.
Mom, you went through a lot of trouble to raise me. So, I want to repay you by being a good daughter from now on.
I remember my eyes welling up with tears at those unexpected words. Eventually, Natalie graduated from university and got a job at a prestigious company. She was a patient child, so she rarely complained about her work. Sometimes, I felt a bit lonely, wishing she would rely on me a little more. After she started working, she would surprise me with trips for my birthday or Mother's Day every year. Thank you, Natalie. I am so fortunate.
Me too, Mom,
Natalie replied, and we both smiled shyly at the hotel during one of our trips. Natalie finally found a partner and said she wanted to get married. He was a senior at the same company, named Colton. His firm mouth, expensive-looking suit, and gentlemanly demeanor were overwhelming. Later, Natalie told me that he had been popular among the female employees since he was a new hire. Handsome, elite, tall, and well-dressed, it was no wonder. I wondered what made him choose Natalie.
Why did I choose Natalie? Well, she is very serious about her work. And she is also very filial, which I found very admirable. I was drawn to such a wonderful person,
Colton said, blushing as they exchanged glances. They looked so fresh and well-matched at that moment. The two got married and, a few years later, had 3 children. Natalie and Colton continued to work at the same company, with Colton now in the HR department. His popularity did not wane, and despite having a wife and children, female employees continued to approach him. Natalie began to express her unease about Colton's friendly nature.
He gets lunch boxes from various women. He says he refuses them, though.
It's okay, Colton seemed sincere.
I hope so, but some people enjoy stealing others' partners.
I've never seen that. Is it true?
Yes.
Natalie nodded vigorously while munching on a snack. Since giving birth, I felt that Natalie had become stronger in many ways. As a wife and mother, she was updating her inner self. However, whenever she was troubled, I always tried to be there for her. As for the grandchildren, the eldest, Elena, and the twins, Lillian and Lydia, were all girls and very close. The three sisters grew up quickly, with Elena now in her 9th grade and Lillian and Lydia in the 5th grade. Despite the age difference, they all shared a love for mystery novels. Last Christmas, they asked for the complete works of Conan Doyle as a present. I wondered if it was something for elementary and junior high school students to read. But they all laughed and said, "We're mystery geeks." Their room is filled with mystery novels. I always see my grandchildren during the summer holidays when the three of them come to stay with me, and they are very attached to me.
Grandma, let's go to the movies,
said Elena.
They're showing Agatha Christie,
said Lillian.
I want popcorn too,
added Lydia. Even though it's only for a few days, seeing their beaming smiles makes me want to do anything for them. All right, let's go then, I said. Natalie had told me not to spoil them too much, but that was difficult. One summer day, during a heat wave, I received a call on my smartphone saying that Natalie had collapsed. What? Colton, is that true? My hands trembled, and my heart felt like it was being crushed. Colton, however, calmly informed me of the hospital where Natalie was, as if it were a routine matter. I hurriedly caught a taxi and headed to the hospital where Natalie and Colton were. By the time I arrived, Natalie had already passed away. Tears overflowed, and a deeper sense of regret than sadness welled up. Why? I called Natalie's name over and over. I wanted her to respond. But her tightly closed eyelids never opened again.
The doctor said it was a heart attack,
Colton said. The granddaughters who had come with him were crying loudly. It was no wonder they were crying and grieving over the sudden event. They were still in their sensitive teenage years. It was natural for them to feel insecure. I couldn't help but hold the three of them tightly. It's okay to cry, all of you. Let's say a proper goodbye to your mom. While hugging my granddaughters tightly in the hospital corridor, I looked at Colton.
Why, Natalie, why?
He turned his back to us, probably trying not to show his tears. It seemed he was crying alone. He wiped his eyes with the cuff of his expensive suit. But for some reason, the cuff didn't seem wet. Sniffling, he turned to face us. Strangely, his eyes looked as if he hadn't been crying at all, and there were no traces of tears on his cheeks.
I'm sorry for losing my composure. I need to go back to the office and report this,
he said calmly. What? Can't you do that over the phone? What about the kids?
Ariana, please take the children home with you. I'm sorry, but please,
he said and left. His calmness was eerie. Or maybe he was just pretending that nothing was wrong. After that, he left all the paperwork and administrative procedures to me, always giving some excuse like an important business meeting or an unavoidable client dinner. At the funeral, he was constantly looking at his smartphone, fidgeting.
Oh, It's from a client. It seems one of our subordinates caused some trouble, and I need to handle it.
Colton said.
But there are many people from your company here too,
I replied. Many people from Natalie and Colton's workplace, including their superiors and subordinates, attended the funeral. There were bosses shedding tears over Natalie's untimely death, female colleagues who had lunch with her, and junior employees. Everyone shared their memories of Natalie, saying she was a caring person. Her work was also outstanding, and she had come up with ideas that no one else could imitate, leading to successful projects. I had never heard Natalie talk about her work. Learning about this side of her now filled me with a sense of inadequacy.
You are the chief mourner, so please give a proper greeting,
I admonished him. Colton sighed in annoyance and muttered.
I understand.
At that moment, a woman approached Colton.
Colton, my condolences,
She said, but changed her tone when she saw me. I was suspicious, but Colton didn't seem to mind and welcomed her happily.
Delilah, you came. Despite being busy. Oh, Ariana, this is Delilah.
Colton suddenly became talkative and even revealed that she was the president's daughter. Watching the two of them, I noticed they seemed unusually close. It didn't seem like they were old acquaintances or childhood friends. Despite being at a funeral, Delilah clung to Colton and wouldn't let go, as if to say, his side is my place. My intuition, which I didn't want to rely on, told me something was wrong. That night, after the grandchildren had gone to bed, I confronted Colton about her.
Her? Oh, Delilah. Well, she's like my girlfriend,
He said irritably. I couldn't believe my ears. Girlfriend.
After getting married, I realized. Natalie is plain, not interesting, and not glamorous,
He said. I stared at him, wondering what he was talking about.
Even though we have money, she kept saving for the kids.
He spat out in disgust.
I was fed up with the poor lifestyle.
Savings are necessary. You need money for the 3 kids' education.
Natalie told me that too. That's why I said I wanted a divorce. Many times.
Many times.
But Natalie refused, saying it wouldn't be good for the kids. At least until they become adults.
He said. For Natalie, who was raised by a single parent, she probably didn't want her daughters to go through the same experience.
She always prioritized the kids and put me last. It's really annoying how serious she is,
Colton said. I struggled to understand. Are there families that don't prioritize their children? Despite being an adult, he seemed to only think about himself. Colton, looking irritated, glanced at his smartphone and continued.
So, I started seeing Delilah to blow off steam, and I strongly felt that it would be better if Natalie wasn't around.
I was speechless, unable to say anything, while he calmly said,
Well, it's just as well. I'm going to remarry the president's daughter. The kids are a nuisance. You take care of them, old woman.
He declared boldly, abandoning his family. Before I could say anything, he quickly disappeared. Although he attended the funeral as the chief mourner, he left the house as soon as it was over, causing the grandchildren to panic. When I tried to contact him, he didn't answer the phone. It seems he even took paid leave from work and hasn't been going to the office. Natalie never consulted me about the divorce. It was a matter between the couple, so it wasn't my place to intervene, but I still feel regret, thinking I might have been able to offer some advice. No, now is not the time to be sentimental, I said, slapping my cheeks with both hands and packing for a few days. I headed to the house where the grandchildren were and decided to stay there for a while. When they saw my face, they were relieved and started crying, causing a commotion. They must have been very anxious with their father gone too. It's okay now, I'm here, I said, hugging the three of them tightly to calm them down before preparing dinner and doing the laundry. When I glanced at the calendar, I saw a date circled in red pen with the words "Summer Vacation Starts" written on it. It seems like it will start next week.
Grandma, you came to our house this year,
Lillian said, hugging my waist tightly. Her eyes were red from crying earlier. With an innocent expression, Lillian stared at me for a moment before pattering out of the living room. Elena and Lydia didn't say anything, but they seemed to be trying to cope with this reality. While spending time with them, I started sorting through Natalie's belongings. As I picked up each item, memories of Natalie flooded back. Why did my daughter, whom I raised with so much effort, have to leave so soon? God is unfair. Thinking of such thoughts, I picked up a diary. It had a combination lock, clearly different from the other items. Come to think of it, she mentioned something a few months ago, I recalled. Natalie had said,
If anything happens to me, please look at the diary with the lock.
She had also told me the combination, saying she would only share it with me. It was the sum of the birthdays of Natalie, Colton, Elena, Lillian, Lydia, and mine. The dial had 4 digits, with the left 2 digits being the month and the right 2 digits being the day. 2788. It's open. What could be written inside? A will, perhaps? Although I didn't really want to look, my curiosity got the better of me, and I slowly turned the pages.
If you are reading this diary, it means I have already left this world.
It began. I was startled by such words. Too much reading of novels. I composed myself and continued reading, only to find something unbelievable written inside.
No way! This can't be true!
The diary detailed the suspicions of Colton's infidelity and the process of gathering evidence. It also touched on the working conditions at her company. There were records showing unreported overtime and instances where she was denied permission to go to the hospital despite complaining of poor health. She had hidden the recording data of those times in another place. I found the recording data and decided to listen to it immediately. It contained a harsh voice berating Natalie when she asked to go to the hospital. I couldn't understand why she was treated so harshly. It seemed that Colton had ordered her transfer to this strict boss.
Colton betrayed me and the children. He will pay for this,
the diary concluded. Natalie had been preparing to demand compensation from Colton and his mistress with this evidence and to proceed with the divorce. I was surprised at how shrewd my daughter was. However, even though I found this, Natalie was no longer here. I threw away the diary and the recording data, thinking they were useless. The 3 sisters bravely continued going to school. I hoped they wouldn't overexert themselves. While doing everything I could, I watched over the 3 of them. A week passed, and the grandchildren started their summer vacation. In the garden, 2 potted sunflowers stood tall, almost ready to bloom. After the summer vacation began, they started spending a lot of time in Colton's room. For the grandchildren, he was still their father, and they couldn't let go of that recognition. Knowing what he had done, it pained me. Even while sorting through Natalie's belongings, I brought snacks to the grandchildren.
I brought orange juice for all of you,
I said. They were looking at the books and scrapbooks Colton had left behind, as if searching for treasures. Sometimes, they would use the family computer or tablet, trying this and that. I thought it might be for a summer vacation project and didn't pry too much. One day, when I returned from shopping, I heard cheers coming from the living room. The grandchildren were laughing at something.
Oh my, what's going on, you three? You seem to be having fun,
I said as I approached. Lydia noticed me and smiled. She quickly took a piece of paper that had just come out of the printer and handed it to me.
With this, Dad is going to hell,
Lydia said. Puzzled, I looked at the paper she handed me. It was a printout of an anonymous message board titled, "Gather here if you want your wife to die." What? What is this? I could tell it was an anonymous message board, but I didn't understand what it meant. Seeing my confusion, Elena explained.
Grandma, see this red name? This person's name is Colton.
Colton?
Yes. Comments posted from this internet connection are displayed in red. So, this is Dad's comment.
Indeed, Colton's comment was displayed in red. As I continued reading, it detailed how he had cornered Natalie.
I abused my authority in the HR department to transfer my wife to a troublesome department. That place is always short-staffed, serving her right. Because she is so caring, she stays late every day to help her subordinates with their overtime, working over 80 hours a month. She'll collapse from overwork soon.
What a terrible thing.
I was shocked, but the comments continued.
Pretending to care for my tired wife, I cooked unhealthy meals full of oil and salt. It was amusing to see her eat them every day. She told me her health check results weren't good, but I won't let her go to the hospital or get a re-examination.
Such malicious words were written in red. In response to Colton's posts, others replied with comments like "You're a monster" or "Keep it up," egging him on. It's hard to believe someone could methodically drive another person to such a state. I couldn't hide my shock that Colton, who seemed so personable, had done all this. The final post read,
"Finally, my wife is gone. She was taken to the hospital with a heart attack, and I met her mother there, pretending to be sad. Now I can get rid of her."
How awful.
He reported Natalie's death with joy. It was so grotesque and hard to believe. Other comments congratulated him, expressed envy, or offered words of encouragement. I never imagined such a vile world existed, and I was stunned. Colton was as cunning and wicked as a snake. How could such a thing be allowed? Anger began to well up inside me. However, I was surprised that the three girls had noticed Colton's behavior.
It's elementary, Watson,
Lillian said, imitating Sherlock Holmes.
Mom was always busy, but Dad seemed to have plenty of free time, which was strange.
She continued.
And
Lydia added.
When we argued with Dad, he said something.
What did he say?
He said, "Don't rely on Mom. She could be gone any day."
Arguing with him suggested that Colton and the grandchildren didn't get along well. They must have been suspicious of his actions for some time. Since then, the three of them had been watching Colton closely. Colton frequently used the computer, looking up recipes and videos for dishes he normally wouldn't be interested in. The tablet's search history included terms like unhealthy food and salt content. They also knew about the mysterious woman in the photos on the tablet. They had seen him slightly smiling right after Natalie died and at the funeral. The final piece of evidence was his scrapbook.
Articles about people collapsing from overwork were collected in it. Some were diagnosed with heart attacks.
Elena said.
So, the three of us thought Dad was the culprit.
Lillian added.
We've been looking for evidence since the summer vacation started.
Lydia said. It seems the mystery-loving three sisters had sharper observational skills than Colton or I had imagined. But how did you manage to find this message board? I asked. Lillian proudly snorted.
Besides the tablet's search history, we read books and restored the deleted history. Watson.
Lydia said. Even though she's only in 5th grade, she managed to do that. If not, we wouldn't have this printout in our hands. How lonely and anxious the young teenage grandchildren must have felt after losing their mother. I remembered their faces, relieved and crying, when they came to this house. Even so, they were trying their best to fight in their own way, and I couldn't overlook that. My eyes welled up with tears.
Grandma?
What's wrong?
Elena asked. I couldn't let the efforts of these little detectives go to waste. I bit my lip, looked at the three of them, and thought of Natalie. He must face the consequences. I vowed that Colton would not escape and would fulfill his parental responsibilities. Thank you, all three of you. Leave the rest to Grandma, I said. Later, I visited a lawyer I knew. I consulted him about whether we could claim compensation based on the evidence the grandchildren had found and their testimonies. He looked closely at the printouts from the message board and the search history evidence, but his face clouded, saying it might not be enough. Then, can we use this as evidence? I asked, showing him the diary and the recording data found among Natalie's belongings.
I'll take a look,
he said, flipping through the diary and listening to the audio data. He then said that combining this diary would significantly strengthen our case and provide grounds for claiming a large amount of compensation. Additionally, we might be able to secure child support. I then sent copies of the audio data and the diary's contents to Natalie's company. I addressed it to the supervisor who had come to the funeral and cried, asking for an internal investigation. The supervisor immediately took action. He reviewed the audio data and the diary and shared them with the executives. The executives learned that Colton had used his authority in the HR department to corner his wife, Natalie, who was also an excellent employee. The executives were furious and summoned Colton. The investigation proceeded by verifying the facts and interviewing other employees, leading to Colton's dismissal. Considering his actions, it was a deserved consequence. Later, I happened to run into him on the street, but he was unrecognizable. His beard was unkempt, and his once high-quality suit was wrinkled.
Ariana! Because of you, my life has fallen apart!
He exclaimed. I frowned, wondering what he was talking about. After all, I had lost my precious daughter. Upon hearing the details, it seemed that his mistress, Delilah, had dumped him shortly after he was forced to resign.
Even someone like me, you'll stay with me, right?
Colton had asked, to which Delilah coldly replied.
Ha! I can't be with an unemployed old man.
They had been living together, but that ended too, and now he was living alone in a shabby apartment.
You've drained me of compensation and child support. It's been terrible.
he complained, grumbling that his savings were nearly depleted due to keeping up with the president's daughter's spending habits. I felt more anger than sadness. I wanted to chase after him and slap his face. However, the fact that he didn't ask about the grandchildren showed that he no longer had any love for his family. Realizing that nothing would affect him, I gave up. It was much happier to focus on raising the 3 grandchildren than to hate him. After Colton resigned, several company executives visited our home. They came to apologize for Natalie. They regretted not being able to grasp her situation and driving her to death. They asked me to accept a large amount of compensation prepared by the company. I was surprised by the sudden offer, but decided to accept it. However, even with that, Natalie would not come back. There would be no more laughing together with her. I thought about this while watering the sunflowers in the garden. The large flowers were standing tall and blooming beautifully. Thanks to the compensation, child support, and Natalie's savings, I could raise the grandchildren without any inconvenience. Elena started going to cram school in preparation for her high school entrance exams. Lillian and Lydia began reading mystery novels and watching dramas, and they seemed to be enjoying their days. Still, sometimes I saw them looking as if they were searching for their mother, and it made my heart ache. Losing my daughter and the grandchildren losing their mother was equally sad. I wanted us to slowly heal from this sadness and loneliness and be able to laugh from the heart together. I hoped we could live like those sunflowers, standing tall and looking up.
How did you like this story? Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.